to the Remembering Akron podcast. I'm your host, Derek Maxfield, and today my guest is Kenneth Pagels. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you for having us.
I am glad to have you. So let's talk about your story. You were born in 1945, right at the end of World War II.
Yeah.
Were you born at home or in a hospital?
No, I was born in Batavia, in St. Jerome's Hospital.
Oh, okay. Which is still there.
December.
Uh-huh.
One heck of a snowstorm because once I was there, it snowed so hard they couldn't come get me for 3 days.
Oh, my goodness.
So my dad couldn't go to come pick her up at the hospital, so I had an aunt who lived in Batavia, and which was about 3 blocks away from St. Jerome's. So I went home to her house with a couple diapers, and that's where they kept me.
All right.
Till they had a car and the Route 5 plowed so that they could make it to Batavia. My dad and old Carl Bloom, they always said, put the chains on and followed the snowblower down Route 5.
All right.
All the way through there to come.
But eventually they got you home.
They got us home.
All right.
Yeah.
So tell me about your parents, William and Wanda.
My dad's family, there were 7 in my dad's family, the Pagelses, and my great-grandfather came here from Lancaster, and he worked in the mines underneath the falls, above the upper falls when they were mining cement, and he was a cooper.
Oh.
And I think they came from Lancaster, I think, originally.
Lancaster, Ohio, or Pennsylvania?
Lancaster, New York.
Oh.
And the Coopers made barrels, which the first cement was put in.
Okay.
And put on the railroad cars, which were shipped from out of Akron on the Peanut.
Uh-huh.
And it went to Tonawanda and got put on the Erie Canal.
Okay.
That's where that first cement went down to build. One of the first things that we know that they built, the biggest thing was the George Washington Bridge.
Oh.
Which is celebrating its, 175 years. And,
yeah.
But that cement came from around here.
What did your dad do for a living?
My dad worked at Dates Laundry when he first got married, and then he went to work at Dunlop Tire.
Okay.
Down in Buffalo or Tonawanda, and more that way.
Did he ever have military service?
No. I think it was the time of the war and that stuff. That's when he was, the Dates Laundry was doing a lot of stuff, and bucks weren't very big, but somebody like his brother Toote and them went to work at the rubber plant, and making tires. Mm-hmm. That was a big deal. Everything needed tires.
You're right.
Still especially after the war and stuff like that. So he worked there 39 years, I think, or something like that. That it really took a toll on him because, some of the middle years that he worked there, he worked up where they make the tires. They're like barrels. I don't know if you've ever seen how tires are made. They're like a beer keg, and when you stick them into them big steam presses, all that steam gets them so hot and turns them into tires. And it'd be like 140, 150 up there by those machines.
Wow.
The sweat. After a while, that's how he got his diabetes and his cancer after a while, because working and all that stuff, you could drink water and you could almost see it come right out of him.
Wow.
Because it's so hot. And he would work different shifts. He'd work 2 weeks nights, 2 weeks days, and then the third shift overnight and stuff like that.
Wow.
And those were the later years it was time to get out of there and retire and stuff like that. But
did he succumb to cancer eventually?
Yeah, because after it started when I was ready to leave for the service in '66 when I graduated, he was fighting with cancer on his nose, skin cancer, and there's the early forms of cancer. They made those lead shields and put over your face, and just where the spot was to try to cure it. And stuff like that. Almost didn't get a chance to see him, but he made it to the airport in time before we were leaving. That he made it from Buffalo to Roswell and then just catch us before we left. So I went in on the buddy system with the kid that I went to high school with, Brian Murray, and that was going to be our big adventure in life here, our senior trip.
I see, to go into the service.
Well, you talk about Akron and some of the things in school when I graduated and stuff like that. It was really kind of funny that how we worked the last 2 years of high school. We worked part-time for the school, cleaning up, emptying wastebaskets and mopping floors and stuff like that, because the kids that were supposed to get the jobs were on welfare. They didn't want to work. They'd rather go out for sports.
I see.
So Stan Victor, who was the business manager of the school, hired us to come work. It was like 3 hours a day or 2.5, whatever you got done, you got the heck out of there. And it paid a whole $1.25 an hour back then.
All right.
Hey, it was a big deal. So we liked working. And when we left, when we signed up for the Air Force, April 1st, senior skip day. Every class has a senior skip day. So ours was on April 1st. And we went to Lockport and we signed up for the Air Force.
I see.
That was our big day out and stuff like that. So, and we got detention for skipping.
Did you?
For skipping school.
Okay.
And Mr. Eckerson, Nancy's father, was in charge of detention at Akron Central School.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we reported to him at 3:30, and he said, "Okay, go do your thing. Go empty the paper."
All right.
So that was our couple days of detention that we had. So
now tell me about your mother.
My mom was a little Polish lady. She was an Urbanski.
Urbanski, that's her maiden name.
That's her maiden name, yeah. And her parents, both of them, my grandfather and Babka they were a first generation coming over.
Were they?
Yeah, they came over from Poland. And it was really quite a thing. They got married in some of the places, they got married in Amsterdam, New York, and then moved this way. And that's where they first met, I think. And we still have family reunions. We just had one last week of the Urbanski family. But he worked in Buffalo at the car shop, Grandpa Urbanski, and they were melting steel down to make wheels and stuff for those coaches, railroad cars and coaches and stuff like that. Somehow or other, over the years, a nail went up and hit him in the eye and took his eye out.
Oh, no.
And the compensation for that was enough money that he moved out of Buffalo and bought a farm in Darien Center.
Oh.
Where his farm was, it was 319 acres, which is now Chestnut Hill Country Club.
Is it really?
Yeah. And they had my grandfather had 3 girls, my Aunt Olga, and my mother was the middle one, and then my Aunt Jenny, or Aunt Jane, is still alive. She's 95.
Wow.
Sharp as ever. And she's made trips back to Poland to find all the families that were cousins and stuff like that left over there.
That's nice.
And it's kind of neat that we get together once a year for our family reunion and stuff like that.
So do you remember your grandparents well then?
Oh, yeah, very well. And he died, I think, 62 of a heart attack.
Okay.
In Batavia. If I go to that hospital and you don't come pick me up, if they don't work on me, I take a taxi home, And by the time my aunt and my Aunt Jenny and them got home, he had passed away at the hospital. So, but the farm, he was milking like 52 cows.
Wow.
That was a big farm. And all of us helped. My dad on the little farm that I lived, where I was raised up on Buell Street, is now Veterans Park. That was part of our farm, and the house was on Buell Street.
I see.
We raised cows, and when I was in high school, I was milking 24 cows at one time in my sophomore year. And I was working part-time for my brother-in-law, who had the farm on Route 5, which is now, what do you want to call it, Ivy Ridge. So you got to figure, and our family, most of the places have gone to bigger things
I
and
see.
stuff like that.
Is your mother still with you?
No, my mom died. Heck, it's got to be 20 years. But no, my mom died. And she went in for a hip operation and never came out of the hospital to use it because, what do you want to call it? The thing that eats your skin up, that there's a name for that. When you get
Staph infection?
Yeah, and all that stuff that she, at Genesee Memorial.
Wow.
Yeah. And it ran rampant for a couple of weeks at Genesee Memorial over there. All the operating rooms, they had the state came in and shut them down so that they cleaned them all up and stuff like that.
Got caught up in all of that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awful.
I'm trying to think of the name. I want to say SARS or something like that. I forgot what it was. But once it got in her, the infection, she never got out of bed to check out that new hip. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. But I mean,
Yeah.
she had a good life. I mean,
That's good.
busy lady.
So you told me you joined the Air Force right out of high school. You'd signed up on senior skip day. Why the Air Force?
Well, I was 20, and Brian was 17, and I was going to get drafted. I knew I was going to get drafted.
Because of the Vietnam War.
Yeah. So him and I were palling around together and I remember how mad his mother was that he was only 17. She had to sign the papers for him to go with me. So that was going to be our big adventure, him and I. And we did. We went to basic training in Amarillo, Texas, because at the time we couldn't go to San Antonio because they had spinal meningitis going on, that they lost six recruits down there at the Air Force Base in Texas, down there in San Antonio, at Lackland. So they opened up an old World War II barracks over in Amarillo, and that's where we went. We went to basic training together. At the end, he went to bomber school, multi-engine things, and I went to fighter school. So I got to work on anything with two engines, and that's what a C shred out. I was a C shred out. That anything two engines, one or two engine fighters, F-100s. The first plane I got to work on though was a B-47. Pull the engines on that and stuff like that. Learn how to be an aircraft mechanic.
So you both became aircraft mechanics.
Yeah. Both were crew chiefs.
Did you both stay stateside?
No. He managed to go overseas. As far as plane-wise, he went on C-141s. After that they went from started out on B-52s. They used to have 9-man crews and went to 7-man crews. So when you're the rookie, you get shipped out. So he went on C-141s out of Charleston, South Carolina. And then from there, they started a brand new thing in the Air Force, rescue service. Guys jump out of helicopters to go rescue people for downed aircraft. And he had a chance to go do that, and he did. And his training was up near Lubbock in the north part of Texas. So when I was stationed down in San Antonio at Randolph Air Force Base on weekends, he could come down.
Nice.
I'd catch up with each other on the weekend, and we'd get him a flight back up to Lubbock and stuff like that. We got to catch up with him before he left to go overseas. He was on Jolly Green Giant helicopters, which when pilots were shot down over Vietnam and stuff like that, they would go pick them up.
Okay.
So that's how he got hurt when he was in the service, because picking up a guy a little bigger than him, putting him on the trimmer that trims the brush down, and takes him back up to the airplane on the cable, and he got a hernia.
In the Vietnam.
Yeah.
And did you stay stateside?
Most of the time. And when I did go, I went from aircraft training school to California, which we remodeled F-100s to go to Vietnam. That was 90 airplanes. And they were, especially the guard birds from Washington, D.C., which were so polished. They looked better than the Thunderbirds. I mean, they were so shiny.
Okay.
And we took all that apart and scratched off all that red, white, and blue paint and painted them green.
All right.
Camouflage,
Yeah.
And by the time we were done, probably 85 of those planes went to Phang Rang, which was in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of them you use them up.
Wow.
Because they were old then already.
Yeah.
F-100s, the lead sled. And,
The lead
I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of them.
I don't think so.
They had one big hole in the center of that thing with a J57 engine in it and stuff like that, which B-52s have 8 of them J57 engines. The first J57 engines were made by Rolls-Royce.
Really?
They were the thing of the future, the Rolls-Royce engines, B-52s and stuff like that. And then Ford came along and said, we can build one cheaper. So a lot of airplanes had F-101, the Voodoo that you see down there in the harbor, down there at the canal side.
Yeah.
Aiming up in the air. It's an F-101 Voodoo that has 2 J57 engines in it.
Wow.
So, you get to know airplanes.
All right.
All different kinds of airplanes and what kind of engines are in them.
I'll bet. So you did that for 4 years.
Yeah.
And what did you do when you get out of the service in 1971?
Well, I came home and we got an apartment here in town up over the Freddie Thomas Agency. That's where we lived when we first came home. And a couple guys wanted me to come lay brick. The guys said that, but they were driving every day to Syracuse building apartments. Leaving at 9 o'clock to come home, turn around, and then I said, though. So I went to see where Akron Falls Park is. It's just across the road from my parents' house. So I went down there and talked to Kenny Cummings, who was the superintendent. He said, yeah, we were hiring. There were 16 guys there at that time. And so had to go see Ben DeYoung, who was the town supervisor. And, they check all your military records and stuff like that. And plus, when I got home, you had to go sign up right away for the VA, and you had to get all your paperwork and your discharge papers filed at the county court and stuff like that. So he said, well, in order to get hired, you got to go down to Buffalo and see the Parks Department and sign up. So at that time, that was before the RAF building was built, the big RAF building. Erie County Parks Department was upstairs in the telephone building.
Oh.
And you took this little rickety elevator up there to the telephone building. And we walked in there and talked with the commissioner, see whether I needed to be hired or not. You had to become a Republican.
That was required.
Oh, that was required if you were going to get hired. You had to you had to pay a whole $15 to the. And for me to think about that was, here I've been gone for 4 years all over the world here and there, and I've got to pay $15 to get a job. But okay, $15, So we signed up, Parks Department, and I got out of the service on October 9th, and I started working at Akron Falls Park, November 9th.
Wow, that's pretty quick. Yeah. And there you stayed for the next 38 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, throughout the county. I've not only just worked at Akron Falls Park, but all of them. Excuse me, Como Park, Ellicott Creek. The Parks Department is the county-wide Parks Department.
Yeah.
If you're building buildings and putting up stone and roofing and digging ditches and putting water lines in, we put the first sprinkling system in over at Sprague Brook and stuff like that. And over at Emory, we put water lines in for hydrants up there. Remember, backhoes were just coming in into deals there. Witch ditch, use a witch ditch to bury 4-inch pipe. A witch ditch, one of them went on a chain.
Oh, okay.
Like you bury electric cable with and stuff. Well, back in them day, witch ditches, you could go down 4 feet. Some of them were pretty big.
Wow.
Yeah, we put the water lines in over at the golf course over there on Elmo Meadows.
Okay.
Those are And I remember, we talk about handling what you handle in life and stuff like that. I remember them taking us over there and unloading a semi-truck load of things that you put on greens so that the mold doesn't eat. And the big skull and crossbones on it. The stuff had all that lead. This was powdered fertilizer with lead and stuff in it that, we carried that stuff bag by bag and stacked it up. 8-10 of us carrying those 60-pound bags of the stuff in there, and look at all the stuff we handled in our lifetimes that, now, and then how they used to complain to us when the wood, when the what do you call the wood that you can use in the water and stuff like that, the
pressure treated
lumber, and all the schools they went to, but
in it. Yep,
look at how we handle, look at all the things every year I would build 12 pressure treated Adirondack tables, and you'd have that stuff all the time. You wear gloves after a while, but still you're cutting that stuff all day.
All the time, exposed to it all the while.
Yeah, you wonder how we survived all those years of all the junk that we were exposed to.
And the days before seatbelts in cars and everything.
Yeah.
Well, you had a nice long career then with the Park Service, doing a little bit of everything. When did you get married to Colette?
1968. June 15th, 1968.
So you were already with the Parks Service. How did you meet your wife?
I've known my wife all my life, almost.
Okay.
Where her grandma lived on the corner of Buffalo Street down here, and my aunt's candy store, which is where the Village Hall is now. The grandmas got us together when we were kids.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, Grandma Green and Grandma Pagels. And my dad's mother, and they were always down trying to help my aunt out at the candy kitchen, wash dishes and scoop ice cream and all that good stuff. So when we were in school, I caught up with her in 3rd grade. We went to school that, it was really kind of funny how I've known her all my life, but done at least be in classes with her and stuff like that. And not that we dated, but I remember in 3rd grade we went to where the sub shop is down here. That was the Akron Theater.
Okay.
And we'd go see a movie together. Little kids could walk up the street.
Sure.
In them days and go to the movie for 50 cents and stuff like that. And that's I've known Colette most of my life. That we played in band together in school and stuff like that, and always kind of been around the families, known the families and stuff like that. So when we were in high school, we dated.
Okay.
So when I left for the service and we were going together, we had like a gang of friends, probably about 8 or 10 of us that, I was gone, then maybe Brian would take her out and would go places and stuff like that. So when I wasn't working on the farm or working at Boulder Park, and I had like 4 or 5 different jobs when I was in high school, helping my brother-in-law on the farm and stuff like that. Plus, by then they had sold the farm, my grandfather's farm over there to the golf course, so they got rid of everything over there. We didn't have to truck hay over there anymore and do stuff like that, but it was busy. All my life I've been busy.
I guess so. So you got married in 1968 then?
Yeah. June 15th, yeah.
So
came home from Texas.
That means the 50th anniversary is.
We just had 51.
Yeah, I was going to say. Well, congratulations.
Yeah. And we're thicker than thieves. And we're painting a house together right now, the 2 of us.
My goodness, that's ambitious.
Yeah, well, and she don't mind being at the peak on the ladder, as long as I move the ladder.
Okay, all right.
And this is the second time she's painted the house.
Wow.
20 years ago when since we've been up there. The only place she wouldn't paint then was around where the electric wires came in. Didn't want to have no part of it.
All right.
Hey, I don't blame her because, when you got all them wires hanging around your back up there, them big loops that hang down, and paint that stuff. So, yeah.
And you have 1 child, Colleen?
I have 2. I have one. Colleen is my oldest one. She was born at Kelley Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas.
Really? Okay.
And my daughter Kelly, when we came home from the service, that was like a year and a half after we came home, Kelly was born, in Batavia at Genesee Memorial.
Okay.
So, catch up with all the neighbors over there. I mean, Dr. Aubert was over, not Aubert, but I'm trying to think of his name. That was over in Corfu. That was our pediatrician. And, yeah. I joined the fire company in the meantime, and when Colleen was born in the service, I couldn't go see my wife because I worked nights on the flight line. And that's when all the classes, if you wanted to go see your child born, were at night.
Oh.
So I couldn't. My wife was in labor for 39 hours.
Oh, my.
We left to go there Friday night. We watched Apollo 11, go around the moon.
Yeah.
That isn't when they landed on the moon, but they went around and then came back. That was like Friday night. We went there. She was in labor. No, you're not going right away. You might as well go home. Okay. Come home. We lived 35 miles the other side of the city of San Antonio. So I was helping my boss fix his trailer, putting a new toilet and a new floor in the trailer because the floor was rotten. So they put a new floor in the trailer. We're ready to put the toilet in and everything like that. And one of the neighbor kids come over and said, "Your wife says she's ready to go back to the hospital." I go, "Oh, okay." So we washed up and we took a slow ride all the way to the other side on Route 410, all the way around the other side of the city of San Antonio.
Wow.
Checked her into the hospital, and we thought we were going to go right away. And that was Saturday. Then I left at, must have been about midnight. She was way down on the list, not moving to have this baby. So the nurse said, "I'll tell her good night for you." So I went home, then went back again the next morning, about 10 o'clock. She was up on the scale a little bit more. You got to figure there's 30, 40 people in this maternity ward at the Air Force Hospital. So finally, 9 o'clock that night, everybody started having babies, one right after another. Okay. So it was like 10 o'clock before I found out that I had a daughter.
All right.
And stuff like that. So it was really kind of neat. So, but you can tell she's from Texas because she likes hot, spicy Mexican food.
Oh, I see. That's how you tell. Okay. And how long was it before Kelley came along?
About 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah.
Were you still in service by that time?
No, I was already home by then, yeah.
Okay, so Kelley was born in Akron?
No, she was born at Genesee Memorial.
And Batavia?
In Batavia.
Okay.
And I was able to go to the classes.
Well, that's good.
So I took her there. I dropped Colette off in her room, and my friend Brian Murray's older sister was a nurse there.
Oh.
She's not ready yet, so I said, "Good. I'm going to go downstairs and go to the bathroom." By the time I wasn't gone 3 minutes.
Oh, my.
It was all over with. She's born.
Wow.
Yeah, it was funny because that fast.
Sometimes it happens that way. So you mentioned a few minutes ago that you joined the fire department. You mentioned that very briefly, but you've got almost as many years in the fire department as you have in your marriage. You've been with the Akron Fire Department for almost 50 years now. Yeah.
When I came home, when I first came home, that was one of the things. Yeah, my uncle, where I'm living now, he was an assistant chief way back when he was alive. And when I was little, that was a big thing to do, would be at the fire hall. At the fire trucks, in the morning, in the summer, in the wintertime, if it snowed, the fire truck was parked on the chains. So you didn't want to get stuck with a fire truck if there was fire. So in the morning, if it was snowing, he'd go down there and we'd put the chains up and hook them together. If it stopped snowing, then it's going to be nice, and the weatherman said that you go down and take the chains off. He was an assistant chief for probably 4 or 5 years and stuff like that. So it's something but I couldn't join the Akron Fire Company because I lived on Buell Street on the wrong side of the road.
Oh, my. Really?
Because that wasn't part of the village.
Oh.
On the other side of the
that's
Buell
kind of
Street.
picky, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's the way the village fathers were. You had to live in the village to become a village firefighter.
You'd think that they'd take all the help they could get.
Well, back in them days, there was a waiting list.
Oh, really?
And I don't know if
wish they had that problem today, huh?
I wish. But up until maybe about 10 years ago, we still had a list. We had at one time 75 people that were firemen.
Wow.
Now we're down to about 45, 48.
I know a lot of communities that...
Yeah. And that's what I do. I do recruit and retention.
Do you?
I do fire prevention. I've been doing fire prevention for 47, 48 years now, probably, of when I first came on. I could see there was never any of that around here. So being in the service and you see that at different bases and stuff like that, I'm doing fire prevention and stuff like that, that it's a need, you know, no matter what, especially for government kids. Because remember, if your dad is stationed in the service, if you're going to be with them, you get base housing and all this other stuff, or live-off housing, and you go to the schools, whichever. But how many places ever teach fire prevention and stuff like that? Even on base, that was a tough thing for the fire department to go out and do. I noticed a lot of the guys that were firemen on the base, you know, because I'd see them every day when the planes came in and hot breaks and stuff like that, that the fire trucks were right there. And you get to talk with them guys. You say, you know, they also were in charge of the schools on base and stuff like that. How do you set up fire prevention when the bell goes off? Do you get out of the place? Or some when you're living on base housing. Remember, this was before the days of every house having smoke detectors.
Right.
And you've seen them houses that caught on fire, and you've heard about the kids that had no way of knowing how to get out.
Yeah. Well, definitely there's a need.
Yeah. You know.
You served for a while as chief or assistant chief?
I've been the fire warden for the last 48, probably 48, 47 years. You have to be in 2 years before you can become an officer.
Okay.
And one of the old-timers that started the fire company way back in the day, Put Harrington, that's what he was, one of the fire wardens, and he would go around inspect buildings in the village, and you could only make suggestions on, you should change them plugs and all. You don't need all them extension cords and stuff like that. But now, that, like most places, they have the building inspector that comes around. And when he tells you, you better get rid of all that stuff, you better do it, because otherwise, especially if it's a business and stuff like that, they can shut you down and stuff like that. But we can only make suggestions. The first fire wardens in this town at the turn of the century or before were guys that would walk around at night and look for fires. Remember, everybody had wooden shingles on their houses, and you better have your rain barrel full, because that was the days of the bucket brigades and stuff like that. There's quite a history of fire wardens, and the clickers were like sirens. When you heard the guy crank that thing, it would wake neighborhoods up and stuff like that. There was fires, like the lamp-lighters. You've heard of the old lamp-lighters that were out, gaslight?
Yep.
Gaslight, and a lot of times the guy maybe did both back in the day and stuff like that. So the histories of fire wardens, and they had other names for them too, and stuff like that. But there was quite a history. The guy who's dead now, who kept a good log of all of that over the years, was his wife runs a liquor store over here, Ruthie, and he really had some of that down pat of when the first ones started and how they were elected to do that, or appointed to them jobs.
Well, it's great to have that history down.
Oh yeah, and Donnie used to keep track of all of that, so
that's great.
So in the histories of Akron, that's what I mean. It's some of these people that are buried over here in this cemetery and stuff like that. I think he'd gone through the history of some of them. One of them's got that written on his stone out here, that he was one of the wardens.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
That is really awesome.
Kind of neat, so yeah.
So one last thing I want to talk about, because if I don't, then Nancy will be upset with me, is the story of Tunis Eckerson and the home that you now live in. Tell me about that.
Well, Tunis by him being the blacksmith, he must have had money, because everybody needed what he made and stuff. If you're going to be a farmer, you better have a plow.
Right, a highly skilled profession.
Yeah. So over the years, at least he made money. And he had a shop down here on the very end of John Street here, where Mechanic Street is, back in there. in his forge, and he had a couple helpers of them. And they made wheels for wagons and stuff like that, because, you know, had to have a guy there that could put the spokes, and they put the steel thing around the wagon wheels and stuff like that. In fact, that's why Akron Avenue, at one time, he had made enough money that he owned the property north of Akron Avenue.
I see. So you built the home that you now live in 1832, is that right?
1832. And I don't think now that's the original house. I think it may have burned down in the meantime in between all of that. But yet, as far as we know, that house was there. It's the first part of my house. That's the upper, it had 4 rooms. There was 2 rooms downstairs and 2 rooms upstairs. And a knee wall, in other words, when you were up there, unless you were standing in the middle of the room, you could stand all the way up, but where the beds were on the side, you were going to lay down anyway, so you wouldn't be able to stand there. And the way it was worked, you came up the back driveway off of, that's what John Eckerson, her father, always thought was really neat, because they came up the hill and went around the house, and on the other side, there was a barn up there. They must have built a barn up in between there, too, to keep the horses in and stuff like that. And over the years, my driveway off of Parkview Drive now was done in 1940 by my Uncle George. He got the guy up who owned the dumps up there where the airport is now, came all the way across lots with a bulldozer and dug that out and to make the driveway, because I'd have to show you the pictures of this, which you and I should probably get together someday. The park wasn't the park until 1946. And the lake, you know where the park lake is?
I think so.
I have a picture that I got, John Eckerson got me. In 1933, it was taken from a biplane, probably over Buell Street, taking a picture east. There's no Parkview Drive. There's no Park Lake. You can see where the valley is down there, where when Tunis Eckerson sold part of his property to the railroad, which where the old Peanut Railroad line is now, that was part of his property that it says here in the deed that he sold. He sold some property to the New York Central Railroad. And so you got to figure they made a switch to go across the lake. There was and you can see in the book here, the great big trestle. The trestle that used to be there, the trestle was 480 feet long, and it was probably 80 feet high. It's kind of a cartoon picture of it in here. That's why I brought this book along, so you can see where the park, in the Park Lake. This is how big the creek was before the lake was put in. And you can still see where the trestle that ran up on East Avenue, across the East Avenue and stuff.
Well, we'll make sure we take a picture of this and put it in the digital scrapbook.
This is the 1949 Centennial book.
Oh, I'll have to look at this.
So, I mean, you know, and up some of the limestone cement places that made wallboard down here in town and stuff. That's what put this town on the map, was the cement and the wallboard. And how do I want to say the mines? The mines, there were so many mines. The mines ran from Akron almost all the way to Clarence Center, where the other mines were started over that way. So they're pumping what they're using the mines for now. Perry's ice cream pumps water out of the mines every day to cool all of them great big compressors.
Geothermal.
Yes, and then they take all that hot water and they put it in a cistern. And at the end of the day, you take that water and run it back down in the mines, and it becomes 55 degrees
again.
Yeah.
Nice.
But see, that's how it saved Perry's millions of dollars to cool them machines. Where else would you get a water source? And plus they got wells drilled into it that if we ever have a big fire here in town, we can always go down to Perry's
Oh.
and hook up to those wells and pump water. See, this is the drawing they have of the going across the lake, where the trestle was. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of stories that go with the legend of Murder Creek. I don't know, they'll have to fill you in on some of the legends of Murder Creek, of all the things.
I have heard some of it before.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have one more question for you. It's probably the most difficult. So, do you have grandchildren?
Yes, I have two.
So imagine, after you're gone, that your grandchildren are talking to their children about you. What would you hope they said?
Well, Mallory Sophie would like to go to your college. She should be going there this year, but I don't know if she's going to make it or not, because her dad isn't getting her going on this thing and isn't teaching her how to drive. But I hope that they know that I was active in this town, that I knew a lot of people in town, which it's getting tougher to know because there's a lot of people that don't live in town. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in this town that my parents taught me to go to the store and talk with Mrs. Sherwood at the hardware store. And if they caught me messing around in Akron, those 3 numbers that you could dial the telephone, because it's happened that I was running around with a bunch of kids one day, and Mrs. Sherwood called my parents and said, "Your son's down here in town," you know, and not that we were doing anything wrong. Back in the day, you could do that. Mm-hmm. And but I mean, you had to watch where you were and who you were.
I see.
And stuff like that. But this has been a great thing in my life. I wish my grandchildren had the freedom that I had to crawl into the caves and go to the places and go swim in the ponds up where Leisurewood is now, like I did. Especially the gravel pits that used to be down where the town joint buildings are together on Clarence Center Road. That was a little reservoir in case there was a water break. They could pump water out of there. Us kids used to go swimming in that gravel pit and stuff like that when we were kids. You couldn't do that now, in town. But as far as knowing as many people I knew in town and stuff like that, and being around people and doing things for people. And it's a shame that, like my wife, before we got married, she used to work up at a little store. I shouldn't say a store. It was a shipping company. It was called, and they would ship things by truck. And she worked after she got out of school at 4:00. She would go there and work until midnight, and she could walk home all the way over to, the railroad tracks, which are on Jackson Street. You didn't have to worry about getting hurt or anything like that. This is a teenage girl. Mm-hmm. I can't let my granddaughter walk almost anywhere alone now without. And my grandson, probably the only thing he'll remember to know how to do that I was around, that I took him to school and stuff like that. But if it's not on a game, or he's smart as a whip. But I'm afraid as far as, unless he can get a job, he'll probably never be able to dig a ditch. You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah. And it's really a shame because I could go to my neighbor's house and help him weed a garden, or take a horse over there with a walk-behind cultivator.
Right.
Even when I was probably 7 years old, I could hook up a bridle and all that stuff. And we had horses on the farm that we could take over to the neighbor. And there's a picture of him here in the front of the book here. Carl Bloom.
Yeah.
World War I man.
Was he?
Yeah. I want to teach you how to shoot, because you're only going to have one chance, like I did. World War I. Doughboy.
Wow.
M1.
Wow.
And that man could shoot a target. She took me pheasant hunting. As soon as a bird got off the ground, I'd blew it up. Kenny, let him get a little ways away. The gun will get the, So,
Yeah.
that's the kind of guy he was. So.
All righty. Well, on that note, we have to stop, unfortunately, but thank you, Ken, for being with us.
Hey, it's really a shame that a lot of people don't know what goes on in the town. Even if once in a while people would go to village board meetings or town board meetings, get to know these people that are going on in town and stuff. This is not the first time I've done the Legend of Murder Creek, some of the things that they've done here and stuff like that. And I gave her a talk one time up at the town hall on who the guys were, the characters that I worked with. I work with some real characters. From guys that chewed tobacco constantly, the old timers that had dripped down their beards. So, when you come to work tomorrow, can you at least wash some of yesterday's, what do you call it, the union workman off of your beard or something like that? Yeah. Old carpenters. I worked with a guy by the name of Ike Wicks, who was an old carpenter, and we'd be out trimming trees. Cut that cherry limb off of there. That's not. At Christmas time, he had turned that old little stump of a piece of cherry wood into a pipe. I used to smoke a pipe, just like he did. And he had gone home and drilled that out, and he made me that pipe.
Nice.
So.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening in, and remember to tune in to the next episode of Remembering Akron.